Next presentation, which is by Alekhya, and Alekhya is part of the project team. He and Moitri, both of them are digitizing at the Mahabodhi Society Archive. So Alekhya, would you like to share your work now with the audience?
Continue very briefly what Mutri already said, but my area will solely emerge from the textual part actually. So I just want to point out that during the vast course when Buddhism emerged primarily as a apara vidya from the Vedas to today's digital sphere, I just want to point out how Buddhism itself is emerging as a newer dimension to textuality, and I'll just point out the milestones that it encountered all throughout the process. So just a moment. So yeah, what the first slide? So I just want to say this is something that I use. I just don't find a lot of usage of this term, but I like to call what is termed primarily as Buddhist modernity. I like to call it Phindesiacal Buddhism because modernity is a process that is much less concerned with modernity and more concerned with the idea of meta-modernity itself. And if you consider very vastly from the textual aspects, uh, while primarily from the ideas of Vedas, you can note one thing that Buddhism is emerged from the Buddhism. The idea of interpretation is an essential aspect of textuality, and Buddhism is itself something that is derived from the Vedas. So we can understand from that perspective that Buddhism is very much concerned with the idea of textuality itself. I just have a hypothesis on this that if Anagarika Dharmapala is to be alive today, he may have directly applied for IAP funding, because you can understand one thing that he had a vast collection of typewriters, he had a vast collection of fountain pens. In fact, he is one of the propounders of typewriters in India. He was very much obsessed with the idea of technology. He might have considered, that let us digitize some of the documents in that. And I have received this massive level of cooperation from the people of Mahabodhi Society. They never just bar me from taking any photographs, whether it is from the office camera or my camera. So from this perspective, when we speak of narratives, Buddhism is very much obsessed with that. And from that perspective, Dharmapala is using narrative, using the traditional print capitalism to put forward his ideas of nationalism, to put forward his ideas of anti-colonialism, to put forward his ideas of modernity, and his ideas of his social and political ideas. So yes, from that perspective, Buddhist modernity is primarily concerned here with a formation of transnational anti-coloniality. And this transnational anti-coloniality is a primal focus of Dharmapala's mission on which Mahabodhi Society was being founded. So yes, from that aspect, under the voice factor, think of this, the idea of Mahabodhi journals. This Mahabodhi journals is something that is a pioneering aspect of the periodical tradition which Dharmapala started. And I just wrote a point in this slide that coincides with the emergence of Buddhist modernity. Now when I look at this sentence, I don't find it is it's a bit jerky thing, because without the print capitalism thing, without the periodical tradition, there would be no modernity at all. Buddhism would still be in the realms of religion. Buddhists will still be primarily practiced in monasteries. Buddhism will primarily be concerned with a narrow sect of religion. But in the Phindesiacal position from the 1860s to 1910s, as I said in the Gold College lecture, that we very much attribute to the Virginia Woolf's quote, that from on or December 1910, human nature changed. But we can also say from 1890s, Buddhism changed and vastly. From 1860s, when Dharmapala actually started with his ideas, Buddhism never remained the same. It was always trying to position itself with the larger ideas of society, politics, and therefore to the areas of anti-coloniality. So, what Dharmapala is doing here, he is integrating a lot of powerful people. He is trying to bring the transnational English-speaking readership so that his ideas have a vehicle. I said this in the earlier lecture that when Dharmapala was speaking about these things, he was not very much concerned with the lay people. But was he not concerned with the spreading of Buddhism? Absolutely not, because when he was speaking of the upper class, he was using them as a vehicle so that they could, in that turn, emerge to the larger areas of society. They are powerful people, and so Dharmapala was rightly maybe thinking that let's integrate this with the idea of textuality so that these people are the vehicle to his ideas. So he was promoting his central tenets, he was promoting the larger philosophies that Buddhism is concerned with, but he was also integrating politics and anti-coloniality with it. So you can understand that Mahabodhi Society, when it was being founded, it was primarily an institution. And this institution, although very much concerned with Dharmapala himself, his ideals, and much his whims and fancies as well, so we can also say that he was at least trying to build a transnational leadership. He was never just leaving the Buddhist ideals which he had in his mind. He was concerned with the central tenets of Buddhism. And as Maitri just mentioned, that the contents of these Mahabodhi journals, it is kind of divided into this tripartite structure: the advertisements, the donation membership fees, and the representatives, the photographs, logos, categories such as notes and news. This is something which is the general structure. This structure will be followed in the other journals such as the Hawaiian Buddhist Animals, the British Mahabodhi Society journal. These are just almost copying, you can say, the ideas that are there. So this is the 1897 issue. I will just very quickly browse through the slides. From this 1897 issue, you can say that the page layout is designed in such a way in which you can actually see that the central holy site of Buddhism, he was very much concerned with the idea of holiness, and in this aspect I think he was also influenced a lot by Islam and other traditions. So yes, he was trying to promote this idea of a central site, and you can see at the bottom that in just after the 1897 issue, you can actually see that there are a lot of other inscriptions there where he primarily quotes one of the aspects from one of the Pitakas. So, yes. Just this is the notes and the news section, which is common in every other aspects of the journal, and it also contains some of the brief commentaries. And if you just come to the reviews, this is where Dharmapala is. This is okay for it. Reviews are correct. No, okay. This is the review slide. Sorry, all my connection is right. Okay, fine. So the reviews portion is something where actually you can see that. This is something where Dharmapala is primarily aiming towards the scholastic aspects. He is not just preaching his ideas, he is also trying to attract a certain scholastic section. We must remember that the current department of Pali at the University of Calcutta, it was founded by Dharmapala himself. It was not by Dharmapala himself directly. He lobbied for its foundation. I'm sorry. He urged the then president of the then Vice Chancellor of University of Kolkata, Sir Ashutosh, so that he could actually just found this department. So he was definitely attracting some of the scholastic aspects of this. So yes, from the reviews, as you can see, that there are aspects where he is directly trying to he is directly trying to attract this scholastic figure, and this is something which is not omnipresent. This is something which is this is something he was sometimes it is omitted in some issues of the journals, but in the later issues, as I come to know, and this is very much present. So yes, in the later issues, it was being increased and it was being voluminated in such a way that it gets a certain aspect, it gets a certain it gets a certain readership. So yes, so yes, yes. The correspondence section, this is this part. So here he is actually pointing towards the correspondences that he is having. After all, he is trying to build a transnational network of Buddhist philosophers and ideas and ideologues. So yes, he is writing vigorously among all sections of Hinduism, Buddhism, not necessarily Islam, but he is trying to maintain a sort of communication so that his ideals of Buddhism is trying to reach a portion of this. So, yes. So you can see, so this is one of the very interesting slides, and it pertains to my area, that is book history. You can see that how the ideas of journals are emerging. So you can see that in the left hand side is one of the earlier issues, and this the page layout on the left hand side, it primarily represents something which is a newsletter style. The newsletter style is something you can see in the older newspaper primarily. This is a newsletter style, not so much of a journal. Maybe he had some he had some constraints regarding the number of pages that he can publish at a time. But in the later period, from the 1905 onwards or 1906 onwards, as you can see on the right hand side, that this is primarily aspiring towards more of a journal-like page layout. So, as you can see, you don't need to always focus on the languages. You can always there is a visual aspect of this, and that is a typography. So you can understand that the contents and language is one aspect of this, but the typography is also emerging so that a more journal-like look is presented there. So yes. So here is one of the aspects that I want to point out. I think Maitri just put some bits of it. So here he positions, and while he was trying to position Buddhism as a superior religion, he was not shying away from emboldening his stance on Buddhism. So you can see that in this area, he was not just trying to portray Buddhism as a superior religion. In that way, he is also downcasting Islam itself. He says that they are both bloodthirsty, and he is not liking the aspect that the Aboriginal, the Santals, they are converting to Christianity. So he is saying that they could be converting to Buddhism itself, but at the same time we must note that he is not putting enough efforts. He is failing to convince just a few people to just convert to Buddhism in his own structure. So yes. So as I just said, that Mahabodhi journal always become a trendsetter. This is closely followed in the later aspects, the other journals. And currently this is mostly, and in the later issues such as from the 1930s, other journals, they primarily carry out this same aspect. So yes, the next part, this is my focus kind of, but I'll just limit some of it. So you can understand one thing, that our team is kind of really small, and Maitri Mukherjee is the project assistant for this thing. Krishna Srinjini helps us whenever she can. So you can understand that the idea of textuality will naturally fall into at some point with the idea of digitality itself. So you cannot say from a 2024 perspective, not even from a 2010 perspective, that text is something that is always printed. Professor Gupta was pointing out that the ideas of textuality is somewhat, the publication is somewhat of an archive itself. And so we must remember that Buddhism is very much concerned with the idea of textuality, as I just said. We should always remember that a lot of the ideas, I asked Professor Shubhanshu Choudhury once that whether a digital version of text is more fluid than a text which is hardbound between two covers, and he absolutely said yes, because with the fragmented and the ever-flowing nature of digitality, text is somewhat which is inherently very flowing. So the idea of text reaches a much fuller expression with the idea of digitality itself. So we are converting at Mahabodhin Society the physical archive, which is there at Arvinda Barua Library, to the digital archives. And as Professor Gupta said, that the transition from the textuality is one of retrieving, one of recovery of the endangered cultures. So what we do right now is we have a pretty standard setup. A lot of people who attended, I think, the workshop for the digitization might have noticed, but there are also a lot of things that we didn't discuss at the time because of the constraints of time. For example, we started with a borrowed D850 from Nikon, and we can understand the challenges, that the unique challenges we had to face, because if you just take the sensor data and convert it to the TIFF file, it will become such a large file that the AP team wouldn't allow you to submit it, and they will inevitably ask you to just downsize it so that you can just so that they could actually upload it to their website. And this is something I think everyone has to go through, because a remote capture, the book, the textbook that is supplied from the EAP team, which is also required to some extent, doesn't discuss everything and anything, and they are not just a 5 problems 1 solution thing. So you can understand from that perspective, you need to figure out for a lot of things by yourself. There is not a very hard and fast rule for digitalization. But here is one of the further things that I would like to discuss, and my time is almost up, I think. So there is a lot of different things which I can talk about, but for the research notes, and I really thank Dr. Schroer, who just hand compiled a lot of indexes and just managed to churn out a very beautiful article on that. This would take a lot of time when you compile it by hand. The research notes that we do is just a glorified index of the pages that we have right now. What we do is we just make a marker in our own Word documents and just make sure just to refer it to back when you are talking about it. And we just started the research part some weeks ago. But this indexing is an extremely time-consuming process. Someday you can just have 100 pages or something, and you still need to refer back to the original pages. So we cannot have a machine-readable text at hand. We cannot have a digital corpus of the text. So what happens is we cannot utilize the unique prospects that the computer has to offer, the digitality has to offer. So we need to understand what hardware and software that is required to transition to the next step of textuality, that is the digitality. We need softwares, we need OCR servers to make it a text, a searchable text. We have Vichitra, which is a product, which is a joint product by a lot of organizations, but pioneered primarily by SCTR. We can have a sort of thing just for the sake of researchers and interested people. And after all, we cannot just keep it just to the hands of the people. If you cannot share the digitality, you cannot just claim your stake on the scholarship, I think. So yes, there are a lot of cost, there are a lots of cost that is involved when you are doing that. But I think if we just come together and think of a proper solution, we can definitely achieve this leap. So yes, thank you.